This is Shilpa here. So this time I'm sharing with you a case of a friend actually who came to see me in 2003. So she was a very close friend and she'd taken a few homeopathics before. However, nothing was working and she was really desperate. And we sort of mutually agreed not to really go into the emotional part of the story, and I thought I would have been prejudiced if I would have gone there because she was too close. So let me tell you how this whole it's an interesting way the whole case came through. So she was pregnant and she had amenorrhea since 2 months, but she was suffering from these really severe migraines. She's had a history, but it was much more severe during pregnancy. So it was a nightmare. It was semilateral headaches, changing sides all the time. There was no specific reason, she could identify it was exposure to sun or doing anything out of routine, if she didn't have enough sleep, late meals. But the sense of the brain exploding, she mentioned, and it was much better by cold application, putting something on the vertex or and then she had this really huge plantar wart, a cauliflower like growth on her big toe, and that was worrying her a lot as well. And again, if I could get rid of that, it was a bonus. And she's always been anemic, and she was on tablets, but the problem was she was still breathless, and she was taking a deep breath, and she said the air doesn't reach the lungs, so she's constantly exhausted and couldn't really function at work. So those were quite a few issues. So somehow I decided to just focus on the migraines because that was her chief thing, and that was what she really wanted relief from. So I asked her, describe your headache, what's exactly happening? And she said that this is really heavy. It's extending from the right eyebrow to the ears, but it could also go to the left side. So the sides weren't really specific. But there was this really pulling sensation as if the head and the ear were connected, or the head and the back of the head was connected. So somehow, everything would burst. It was absolutely throbbing. And she did this really sort of a pulling thing. Something was pulling inside, and the tension that was created there. And the analogy she could give was like a rubber band under tension. And it was much better by extremely hard pressure. So she would ask her husband to, stand on her forehead with one foot so that it gave enough pressure to release that. So the whole thing was like the eardrum at the back of my head and the forehead were really pulling tightly towards each other. And then they relaxed, but that pull was the most intense part. So she said it's something which was similar to also when I had that dysmenorrhea. So she had really painful menses, and she said I felt exactly the same way during my uterine contraction. It was like a twist from the front to the back, and this intense, and she did this with nausea. And I said, talk about that twist, and she said it's like the uterus is contracting and relaxing, and it's pressing hard, and it gradually reaches the peak, and then it relaxes, and then this goes on. It's that horrible pain which was better by tightly pressing the abdomen, and I would twist and turn, and that tension which was created, and it was like a stretch. If I stretch my body backwards, and the stretch is released if I move forward. So that was interesting, the way she, there were two different places where she was mentioning the same sort of a sensation. So that got me really interested because I thought this is where I could actually work using the Boenninghausen's approach. So I said, what other places you felt the same thing? And she said, I have these recurrent nightmares that somebody is pressing on me, or something is pressing on me. So she doesn't see anyone, but there is this extreme heavy pressure on her chest, and then she wants to release it. The word she used was, I want to release myself. And I get really scared with palpitations. I'm extremely tired and exhausted, but I've used all my energy to throw that thing away. So this extreme pressure, like this really heavy tension, and then she wants to release it. So she said that was a very similar sensation which she connected at that particular moment. And then we got talking about, what other things happened. And she said, when this pain, I'll really want to dance. I like this really lively music and I just dance around the house. Even with the severe painful menses, I can dance very hard. Somehow that hard, rigorous, forceful dancing completely relaxes that whole thing. So unless that relaxation happens, she doesn't feel better. And then she said, remember during obstetric posting in the labor room, when I watched those mothers in labor, I can now relate to the pains. The pains are so intense and suddenly the child's out and they're relaxed. So it's like suddenly relaxed in a second. And that is what I can relate to. And she had sort of a freaking sort of moment early in her pregnancy where she had this really pulling sensation in the on one side of her pelvic region, and the doctors were suspecting ectopic pregnancy, but everything turned out to be okay. So she said that was also something which happened at the start of my pregnancy. The other thing she started sort of, then talking about was this, when I'm in a really quiet place near the sea, or, under green trees, or where there is this really cool natural beauty and then there are no tensions, that relaxation is what she feels when, which is when there is the tightness isn't there. So that was basically the case. And I thought I had enough information to actually work a basic, complete symptom. I had a good location, I had a good sensation, I had a few modalities, and I had a good concomitant. So the reason I thought the Boenninghausen's approach would be perfect for this. So I was looking at a case and looking at different things, and I thought there were quite a few different locations, but I chose the forehead to stand out because that was the chief complaint. So for me, this forehead extended to the ear and extending to the sides and the back of her head was a very important location. I wanted my remedy to cover these things, but what was most important was this general sensation. No matter where she went, the main pain was this alternation of constriction and tension and this relaxation, which she mentioned in different ways. So that for me was a very key symptom in the sensation. And then she had a few modalities, but nothing really struck out. But I found this important, this extreme hard pressure and coldness. I wanted to take dancing, but I thought it was actually giving her the relaxation, which was what the whole idea was. So that was one thing at the back of my mind. And this interesting thing about this weight on the chest at night with these nightmares. For me, that was an important concomitant. There were no other emotional or mental symptoms at all, but that was a very mind-body connection for me. So I thought that I should take that as a part of the case. Now, interestingly, when I started repertorizing, there were lots of remedies coming up. But I was not happy with anything. I wasn't really happy with the way the symptoms were coming up in. I didn't want to split the sensation. I mean, there were remedies with constriction and there were remedies with relaxation. But when I put them together, I was looking for something which had both together and alternating. And to be really frank, it wasn't repertorization which helped me, but one of the lectures in the college where a remedy was described beautifully by one of my teachers, and this sensation reminded me of the lectures of Cactus grandiflora. So as you all know, cactus is a heart remedy, and what came up for me through that lecture and also through the different cactus prescriptions was this thing about the heart being clutched and released alternately. So that for me was a key symptom. And it wasn't just about the heart. Wherever you read and wherever you go, it could be in the rectum, it could be in the vagina, it could be in the pelvic region, in the urinary bladder, in the abdomen, in the chest region. So this was a very common sensation, and also in the head. So it was about expanded and contraction. It was about being clasped and unclasped. So these are coming up from different source books, Ellen's Encyclopedia, Clark's Dictionary. So this alternation, contraction, and relaxation, only Bojo's repertory mentions it quite clearly. And there are a few other remedies in it, but for me, cactus stands out. So for me, everything seemed to fit really well. Everything was about cactus. And then I was reading Clark's Dictionary, and somehow when I was reading through the notes, it mentioned that there is a botanical relationship of cactus with another remedy, and that's serious bonplanty. Now, I wanted to differentiate, because I just didn't want to stick to one remedy that came up in my mind and just prescribe it. I wanted to do a bit of differential diagnosis, so I thought I should read up some other remedies which come up as strongly with cactus. But this particular thing, I just thought, let's first go to the botanical, because I love going into the relationship of the group, the family, which is also part of my Boenninghausen analysis, the group analysis, which is a generalization concept for me. So I read Serious Bonplanty, and when I started reading this remedy, it was sort of quite the way it came up, and it was from the same book. So the first thing which comes up when you read it in Clark's is weighed down by an incubus at night. So they feel there is something on the chest, and it's really hard, heavy pressure. And then the pains which are described are quite unique. It's about pains which go through something. So the globe of the eye, it goes backward, or the head feels drawn to the left and backwards, or this pressive pain from the forehead going to the ear. Now this is very unique. I did not find, you find the pressive pains and the relaxation in the cactus itself, and it's also true for Sirius. But this thing was unique about where something was connected to the other and it was stretched and drawn. So sensation of a board bound to the back of the head, especially on the left side. Severe pain running through the head, as if a great stone is laid on the heart. And I thought this is exactly the way she mentioned about a rubber band stretching and pulling two things together inside and tightly. And the more I read, it's not a very well proven remedy, but whatever I read, I just thought it really fit quite well. And I decided to go with Sirius, because if it would not have worked, I would have gone back to cactus. But I just thought I have to try this remedy. It was quite close in the way the sensations, the individual symptoms were coming up rather than the general picture. And so she was given a 200, and she was given a few doses. So she was asked to take the first dose and take another dose if nothing happened in a week's time. So she calls me after a month, and she says, I'm feeling really fresh and energetic, and I'm doing double the amount of work I can normally do because that lethargy is gone. She did not mention anything about the headaches, and it wasn't really a proper formal follow-up, so I didn't ask. And then 2 months later, she writes, the plantar wart, it dropped off. And that was really surprising because it was since 1 year. And then I asked about what happened with the headaches, and she said there has been no headaches since the last 2 months, and that through that whole pregnancy there were hardly any headaches. She did take the remedy if she felt the pain coming up, but they never escalated. She delivered a healthy baby and she remained well throughout that pregnancy. So for me, it was quite sort of cactus family and Sirius was a really interesting connection. And I think for me it came, that whole process of the general sensation of the family coming up as the contraction and the relaxation, but the individual symptom of the Serious Bonplanty where this rubber band sensation, which is striking, comes up. So I think that was for me coming together really well, and that is what this whole process taught me, is you sort of work both ways. You not just generalize, you also individualize. And together, if things come up, then the remedy can really do a wonderful job. So I hope this helps you some insight into the concept, and the generalization and the grand generalization approach always opens up new avenues and new ways of looking at cases for me. So I'll be really interested to hear about your cases and whether you use the Boenninghausen's approach in your practice as well. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much, and I look forward to connect with you next time. Bye-bye.